My friends, most men don't know they have a prostate until it tries to kill them. And by that time, it might be too late. President Joe Biden is now battling an incurable metastatic prostate cancer. A harsh reminder that this disease doesn't always give you a warning. And while he's 82, the youngest documented case, he was just 13. This isn't just an old man's problem anymore, as the diagnosis of prostate cancer is rising under 50. The early signs, weak flow, frequent night urination, or a bladder that never feels empty can seem harmless, but they might be hiding something deadly. The good news is you can fight back before it's too late. And it starts with what you eat and don't eat. Here's how to start. Go to the produce aisle and find cruciferous vegetables. Some examples are broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and kale. There is a reason why your mom told you to finish her broccoli. She may not have known that they contain powerful cancer-fighting ingredients, but she knew it was good for you. All cruciferous vegetables are rich in sulforaphane and indole-free carbonate, which boosts phase 2 detoxification enzymes, promotes apoptosis, and reduces androgen receptor activity. Now, I rattled off a lot of complex words just to say that it stimulates immune system to help you fight cancer, and it calms down the hormones that make prostate cancer grow. Think of your immune cells like the car you drive. Periodically, you're going to need a mechanic to tune up your car, right? Well, enzymes are the mechanics to keep your cells tuned up. Now we own a Subaru that's supposed to get an oil change every 6,000 miles. And if we don't do it eventually, the debris will clog up the motor, right? And then the car may not drive. Your cells collect debris too, which can be so toxic that it clogs up the motor in the cells called a genetic material. These toxins mutate your DNA, and it can either mutate the whole cell to turn cancerous, or it can destroy the cell. Have you ever gone on vacation and forgot to throw away your trash? You walk in and your whole kitchen smells like a compost factory, right? If you've ever walked near a composting bin, you'll notice gas rising from that area. And then you'll smell chemicals created by metabolism from bacteria and mold. Do you think it's healthy? No. Not for you to inhale it. Your cell also creates chemicals from metabolism that are very dangerous for your cells. And every day it needs to detoxify. Otherwise, the toxins build up and can mutate the cells to become cancerous. And this is why you have to eat cruciferous vegetables daily. Now, luckily for you, a competent immune system will hunt and take down cancer cells because you have them every day. Recently, I heard on the news there was a jailbreak. Actually, if you jailbreak, 10 inmates escaped the Orleans Justice Center in a jailbreak that shocked neighbors and officials. And these cops are hunting for prisoners. That's what your immune cells do, hunt for cancer cells. And if it doesn't do a good job, if they can't find the prisoners, well, what happens? They just start living their life and doing more crime. Well, cancer cells start growing in your body if your immune system can't take them out. Now, currently at these jail facilities, they were underfunded, and so nobody was watching the prisoners, and they escaped. And when you underfunded your own immune cells, you allow cancer to grow. And escape surveillance, it turns out that the prisoners broke out because the cameras were broken. It was so bad that they had time to rip out the toilet and sink and create a hole in a wall to walk through. And if you aren't giving your immune cells tools that they need, your cancer cells will rip out your body to choose to, and creates holes everywhere it goes. And this happens with normal tissue when cancer is metastasized, like in Joe Biden's bone. So what are the tools that you need? Well, you need to eat multiple servings of cruciferous vegetables to give your body those tools to detoxify every day. And unlike your car, where you have to drive to a mechanic, the mechanics, your cells are already in your body. They are waiting for the tools, and you have to eat them to give it to them. Some people do detox once in a while, maybe once a year. Not his daily process. It's like showering. Have you ever sat next to that kid who you know didn't take a bath last night? And my kids don't know this, but I often take an extra sniff when I go in to give him a hug to make sure that they've showered. And when they were small, they used to have grime behind your earlobes and under their neck. And I know sometimes they didn't use any soap. I know I did that when I was a kid. So it helps to get out the oils and sweat off much better than just a water rinse. However, if you have really dry skin, like the wrong soap can actually make your skin even worse. Inside your body, your cells use special proteins called glutathione as transferase. These enzymes, they are the key detoxifiers for yourself. And they neutralize carcinogen, and it's amazing that Big Pharma has trained generations of people that the only way to fight cancer is to get chemotherapy. Yet, there is no chemotherapy that activates the most important detoxification system in your body. And that's a glutathione redox system. The best way to do that is through food. How did Himmel even start? Well, in 1942, nitrogen mustard, a derivative of nitrogen gas, was discovered to suppress a bone marrow of soldiers exposed to mustard gas during World War II. Nitrogen mustard was originally used to remove warts. Now, these soldiers, they ended up with low white blood cells, which is not compatible with life. Unless your immune system has turned cancers like lymphoma, and it turns out that nitrogen mustard couldn't cause people with lymphoma to go into temporary remission. And that was the birth of cancer chemotherapy. And the next decade later, drugs like methyltrexate, 6-more-captopurine, and vincristine were invented to attack DNA synthesis. And unfortunately, unlike food, when you get chemotherapy, it affects both the cancer cells and normal cells. So hence, people on chemotherapy get bone marrow suppression, hair loss, liver toxicity, and ulcers throughout their gastrointestinal tract. Unfortunately, those drugs don't treat prostate cancer. The prostate is a very tiny walnut-sized gland that is located below the bladder. Now, there is actually a tube that goes through that prostate gland. That's called the urethra, and that connects the bladder to the outside world. The urethra allows people to urinate. And unfortunately, when the prostate enlarges, like with 9 prostatic hypertrophy, it often enlarges from the inside, which chokes through urethra, then blocking the bladder from draining urine. And that's why, as men grow older, they have problems urinating. Now, the prostate is a unique organ because androgen hormones like testosterone, they make it grow. So if you get rid of androgen hormones, then you can shrink prostate tumors. This is called androgen deprivation therapy, which won a Nobel Prize in 1966. Now, do you know how they got rid of androgens in the beginning? Well, which organ do you think makes testosterone? Remember, testosterone is higher in men. Yep, they cut those out. However, the adrenal glands also make androgens, and you need your adrenal glands to live. But turns out, if you give them female hormones like estrogen and luteinizing hormone, those hormones can counteract the androgens to shrink prostate cancer. Life would be so simple if we could simply take female hormones to cure prostate cancer. Unfortunately, there are other hormones that stimulate prostate cancer found in your food, such as insulin-like growth factor 1 And when you eat food with insulin-like growth factor 1, it makes prostate cancers divide and immortal. Now, can you think of a common food with high amounts of insulin-like growth factor 1? I'll give you a hint. What food helps our children grow the fastest? Well, if you were a baby, you may have been breastfed by your mom, right? Breast milk contains a lot of insulin-like growth factor 1, which is good for the baby. However, at some point in your life, your mom, we knew of, but then she transitioned into another breast milk called dairy. The rising dairy has been associated with the 25-fold rise in prostate cancer in Japanese men since World War II. And before World War II, the Japanese had a traditional diet with very low dairy consumption. But to be fair, after World War II, it wasn't just dairy that they increased by 20-fold. They ate a bunch of meat and a bunch of eggs as well. And I wish it was just as easy as cutting out dairy, but it's not, because it isn't just dairy that has insulin-like growth factor 1. Your own liver makes insulin-like growth factor 1 when it's stimulated by the right foods. Now, nothing in life is ever just black and white, just good or bad. Now, insulin-like growth factor 1 is actually important for you as an adult to regulate your metabolism and to repair tissue. It's important for your muscles and your bones, and every time you eat protein that's rich in leucine, methionine, and arginine, you actually stimulate your liver to make more insulin-like growth factor 1. So this is another reason why you need to eat protein. But protein is kind of like water. You have to have just the right amount, too much, and your body is swollen, and unhealthy, right? Too little, and you're dehydrated. The same thing is with protein. You need a balance. When you have an excessive amount of protein, you actually excessively stimulate the production of insulin-like growth factor 1, and high circulating levels will increase prostate cancer to grow. Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I can do to help you on your journey. Okay, back to the video now. So overeating protein, specifically animal protein, causes higher blood levels. Circulating insulin-like growth factor 1. That's because these essential amino acids, they activate mTOR, which activates growth hormone. That tells the liver, make more insulin-like growth factor 1. And like all other biochemical processes in your body, life gets more complex. Insulin itself also stimulates the liver to make insulin-like growth factor 1. So this is another reason why insulin resistance is associated with higher cancer rates. How can you get your insulin levels controlled and low? Because people with high insulin means their mitochondria is unable to process carbohydrates and sugar. The two organs responsible to process carbohydrates, specifically glucose, are your liver muscles. Now, if you're eating fructose, like table sugar and honey, that poison drill liver, and if you're eating saturated fat, either directly from your food, or if you're eating excessive calories, that poison drill muscles to prevent your body's natural ability to suck in glucose to help you out after your meals. As a result, your pancreas will make more insulin, thinking that it's behind in his job. And this will show in a long time ago when people were split into 4 food camps. One camp had no food. The second camp were given a high-fat diet. The third camp ate a high-protein diet. And the last camp were given a high-carbohydrate diet. Then they were given a glucose tolerance test to see who had the highest blood sugar levels. In the people who fasted, they had high blood sugar levels, just like the people who ate fat. And the reason is because when you fast, you mobilize your own fat stores. And fat makes you more insulin resistant. And since then, saturated fats have been shown on MRI scans to deposit in the pancreas muscle and liver to make people more insulin resistant. Fat does not belong in these tissues, so it makes these organs sick. So what can you eat? Well, the good news is there are a lot of phytonutrients that can help you lower your insulin-like growth factor 1 so that you can not stimulate your prostate cancer to grow, but you have to eat enough of them while simultaneously avoid the toxins that are stressing your immune system and your metabolism to promote cancer growth. Now, bad food messes up slowly, unlike cyanide. How long have you been checking down microplastics in your water bottles, right? Not all poisons are immediately lethal. It could be silently suppressing your bone marrow and lowering your white blood cells without you even knowing it. And this is why food is so confusing. And those type of foods are the most harmful when the effects are subtle. Oftentimes, bad food are the devil in disguise. They look delicious. They're addicted, but they're so bad for us. Did you know that when you drip milk, even organic milk, with no added hormones, it makes prostate cancer cells grow faster, 30% faster in a petri dish? Now, if you repeated the experiment with almond milk actually suppressed prostate cancer growth by 30%. Now, almond milk, unlike dairy milk, is not a good source of protein, but the almond milk also has other ingredients that are unique fighting nutrients to almonds that dairy milk just doesn't have. Meta-analysis found that people who eat a lot of dairy, including regular milk, low-fat milk and cheese with calcium, all have an increased risk prostate cancer. And it's not just insulin-like growth factor 1. That promotes prostate cancer to grow. It turns out calcium is also associated with an increased risk of prostate cancer. And this isn't another reason why I don't take calcium supplements, even though I don't have a prostate. If you're a doctor prescribed calcium supplementations, don't stop that. Have a discussion with your doctor about the risk and benefits. For you, the benefits may outweigh the risk. But that's a personal discussion with your own personal medical doctor. And let's be real. Cancer is tough to treat and even tougher to cure. And if you want the best chance of beating it, prevention and early action are key. That starts with activating your immune system. I've broken down the recipe into 5 core pillars I call SMILE, sleep, mingle, ingestion, light, and exercise. Now, each one of these matters. The L stands for light, specifically sunlight, because sunlight stimulates your body to fight cancer. And one way it does that is through the production of vitamin D. However, the vitamin D that your skin makes is not bioactive. In order to make that vitamin D bioactive, it has to go through the liver and then to the kidney. Active vitamin D calcium trial or 1,5-dioxy vitamin D3 regulates cell growth, differentiation, promotes apoptosis, which is programmed cell death, but reduces inflammation and inhibits angiogenesis to prevent blood vessel formation, which tumors need to grow. Now, in the prostate tissue, there are vitamin D receptors, and active vitamin D can actually slow and suppress tumor development. But the metabolism of vitamin D, like I mentioned, is not so simple. After your skin makes vitamin D, it needs to become bioactive. So first that vitamin D, holy calcium for all, goes to the liver to be stored. Holy calcium for all, or vitamin D3, then needs to become 25-hydroxy vitamin D, which is an inactive storage form. So that 25 hydroxyvitamin D is still inactive in the body until it goes to the kidney or the prostate, actually, which then turns 25 hydroxyvitamin D into 125 dihydroxyvitamin D, the active form. And in order for them to do so, they need an enzyme called 1-alpha hydroxylase. Unfortunately, high levels of calcium prevents this from happening because reduces 1-alpha hydroxylase enzymes, and it descises indirectly through your parathyroid glands, which is responsible for controlling your calcium balance. High calcium levels tell the parathyroid gland it doesn't need to secrete any more parathyroid hormone. And the parathyroid hormone is a key simulator of 1-alpha hydroxylase. And remember, you need that in your prostate to convert inactive vitamin D to active vitamin D form. Therefore, when you have less parathyroid hormone, you have less activated vitamin D in your tissue from prostate cancer. But dare you having so many issues when you rather try a plant-based milk so that you can potentially counteract androgens because of the phytoestrogens found in soy milk. So androgens is how prostate cancer grows. So chemotherapy or hormonal therapy blocks that. And when you eat foods of phytoestrogens, specifically isoflavones like gumosine and diazinon, they actually bind to estrogen receptor weakly. And this can modulate hormone-sensitive cancer vests. The Japanese are some of the longest loving people on earth. They eat 6 to 11 grams of soy protein a day. And the average Japanese eats about 13.5 pounds of soy a year. The older Japanese, they have retained their traditional diets of 3 servings a day. Soy milk has an equivalent amount of protein as dairy. And in fact, many soy foods are high in protein. And traditionally, they were foods fed to samurai warriors for battle. Now, Japan's older generation has one of the highest life expectancies in the world. My family grew up eating a ton of soy as well. I had tofu tonight. I tried to feed soy to my children multiple times a week. And now I don't have a prostate, but I'm really glad my parents fed me tofu as a child, or just soy in general, because children who eat soy have a lower risk of breast cancer when they grow up. But if you think about it, we're not just eating isoflavones when we eat soy products, but soybean is a whole food, and it has lignans, fiber, and other phytonutrients. Many plants have lignans, like lentils, and lignans actually also have weak estrogenic activity, because after you eat lignans, your gut bacteria convert them into other molecules such as internal legens, internal diols, and internal lactone. Now, most people, when they think about soy, they think about it affecting their hormones because of the isoflavones that have a weak estrogenic effect. They don't realize it's actually a protective effect. But if you eat any plants, you're going to eat some lignans, because beans, lentils, green seeds, fruits, and vegetables, they all have lignans. And I just told you that lignans can be converted into biomolecules with estrogen effects by your gut bacteria. And you would think that it would be beneficial, but unfortunately at this time, cities have not proven that it suppresses prostate cancer growth. However, when you eat food, you're not just eating lignans or isoflavones. People eat entire foods. And when you eat whole food, you're getting thousands of phytochemicals, modes of which people have not studied. However, we do know people who eat a strict plant-based diet, they have been shown to shrink their prostate cancer and lower their PSA. And if you can do that, you've cured your prostate cancer. And if you take the blood of a plant-based dieter and drip it on prostate cancer cells, their blood suppresses prostate cancer growth 8 times more. Those who eat a standard American diet, and I suspect it's probably not just a hormonal effect that these plants have on prostate cancer. When you eat plants, you also get antioxidants with anti-inflammatory benefits from these plant phytochemicals. And the fiber, well, that's fermented by your gut microbiome into beneficial short-chain fatty acids that influences your immune function and lowers inflammation. Plant phytochemicals, they work in multiple ways in your body. Gene and isoflavone found in soy that can inhibit angiogenesis so that tumors don't get a new blood supply. It also inhibits tyrosine kinases, which are important in cancer signaling. So you can disrupt both of them. Now, even though I'm talking about these foods separately, in reality, people eat food in combination with each other. For example, have you ever eaten beans with tomatoes? That's a delicious chili. Tomatoes, especially cooked tomatoes, you can release lycopene, a red coronary pigment that helps your cells to reduce oxidative stress and neutralize free radicals that cause DNA damage. Lycopene also modulates insulin-like growth factor 1. It literally can decrease insulin-like growth factor 1, which slows the proliferation of prostate cancer cells. Cooking your tomatoes with a little bit of heat is important to improve because it releases it from the plant matrix to make it more absorbable. And chili isn't going to be tasty without spices, right? I use a lot of spices from the allium family of vegetables such as garlic, onions, leeks, shallot, and chives. And phytene allicin, that is released when you crush the vegetable. Allicin enhances your detoxification enzymes in your liver. It also suppresses nitrosamine formation and overall reduces carcinogens from processed foods. It can induce apoptosis or death of cancer cells, and it inhibits cancer cell invasion and metastasis. But allicin is heat sensitive, so it really should be the last ingredient to go into your dish if you want to retain its benefits. Now I want to spend some time on nitrosamines. You may have heard of it, contaminating prescription drugs starting from 2018. Lots of popular blockbuster drugs were taken off the market, and several lawsuits have been filed. In 2018, Nelson Martin, a blood pressure medication, was at first major medication found to have NDMA and nitrosyl dimethylamine. This was detected in the generic for saltine made by Chinese manufacturers. This triggered a global recall and regulatory investigations. NDMA is a probable human carcinogen. This was followed by, in 2019, a recall of nitidine or Azamtec, a common acid reducer that was also found to have NDMA that would form over time under normal storage conditions. So the nitidine was pulled off the markets worldwide in 2020. Now this brings us to 2020, in which metformin, a popular type 2 diabetes drug, was also found to have NDMA. And this was only found in certain batches, especially from overseas manufacturers. So some lots had NDMA levels above the FDA's acceptable daily intake limit, which is 96 nanograms per day. This resulted in voluntary recalls in the US, in Canada, in Europe, in Asia. And since 2020, other medications such as angiotensin receptor blockers, losartan, irbesartan, also nitisadine, and other H2 blockers, certain antibiotics like rifampin, anesthetics, and smoking cessation drugs also have been contaminated due to changing manufacturing processes, especially at overseas facility. Now, how does this happen? They probably used some solvent reagent. They probably didn't quality control well. They had some kind of nitrite containing reaction that formed these amines. There's a lot of lost trust, right, in the whole system. The thing is, one little pill probably isn't going to be that bad. Nitrosamine exposure is cumulative, and the counter risk depends on the dose and duration and the type of nitrosine in your individual susceptibility. You don't have to make a dose hit all at once. You increase your cancer risk. You can just do it every day or multiple times a day. So the regulatory agencies like the FDA, the EMA, they consider low-level exposures over a long period of time to be potentially carcinogenic. If it is above a certain threshold, so if you took those drugs, don't you feel angry that they had carcinogens in your medicines? Well, what if I told you that these carcinogens, nitrosamines, are actually very commonly found in common foods, popular foods, especially processed meats and preserved or fermented foods. Unlike pharmaceuticals, nitrosamines are found naturally in food and they're not regulated, and the same cancer risk happens. Exposure to food and drug both add up. Nitrosamines form when nitrites or nitrates are used as preservatives. This react with the amines from the proteins, especially under high heat, like frying and grilling. So you're making nitrosamines if you cook it wrong. And all nitrosamines are classified as human carcinogens, specifically in DMA, NDA, NDIPIP, and more, and several others. So which foods have the highest nitrosamines? Well, the worst offender is that fried bacon, especially when you overcook it or you pan fry it. Grilling meats form more nitrosamines because you have that high heat. Hence, your barbecue grill makes your food toxic. Minimize using them. Cured meats like sausages and ham also harbor nitrosamine, which increases with heat. Smoked fish and meats also have nitrosamines. Now, I know I'm taking away all the delicious way to eat meat. So maybe you should cut down on meat. But if you're going to eat meat, why not eat it? Stew. And then add some vegetables to that stew. But don't add pickled vegetables because they contain nitrosamines too. Lots of Asian recipes call for pickled vegetables. I'm the first to admit they are very tasty, but I really try not to eat them as they're associated with higher weights of stomach and a soft feed yield cancer. Currently, there's this fermented food fed, and lots of professionals from MDs and PhDs from Stanford, Harvard, they're trying to promote your gut health by telling you to eat more fermented foods. And I don't disagree that fermented foods have been associated with an increased gut microbial diversity. However, nobody's addressing the elephant in the room, which are rising rates of gastroenteritis. We already know in Asia, there's a gastric cancer belt that have existed for decades. So I can't figure out why we're ignoring that fact. And promoting fermented foods, that's associated with gastrointestinal cancers. I personally am not willing to sacrifice getting some microbial diversity to elevate my soft feed yield in stomach cancer risk. I think there are safer ways to diversify my gut microbiome without eating cancer-causing fermented foods. Now, I find it rather ironic that people are suing drug manufacturers over nitrosamines in their pills when they are eating bacon, deli sandwiches, and grilling their food. So if you want to maximize your chance of fighting any cancer and avoiding prostate cancer, it's highly recommended that you avoid high heat cooking methods and eliminate processed meats and dairy. And it helps to rebuild labels. Choose nitrite-free options whenever it's possible. Now, if you eat fresh, you can maximize antioxidants, like vitamin C, lycopene, cyphorphane to help you in this cancer fight. But I understand meat is really tasty. Now, I've thought about this problem for a while. This is because I'm trying to feed my family. I mean, it's tasty because it has that umami taste, the amino acids, and then the glycogen, the sweetness. You know, a lot of times people marinate meats with some kind of sweet sauce. You know, so you can actually use that umami flavor and make plant taste better without using meat by using fungi or edible mushrooms. There are a lot of edible mushrooms like shiitake, mutake, reishi, turkey tail, bacchanatta, mumi, two vegetables. Well, is improve your immunity. Now, the heat compounds are beta-glucans, lintin, PSK, or polysaccharide K. These molecules immodulate by activating natural killer cells, macrophages, and dendritic cells, all protect you by suppressing tumor growth, inflammation, and they enhance cytokine activity to target those abnormal cells. Some mushrooms actually have been shown to reduce PSA levels and inhibit prostate tumor growth in models. Now, by themselves, mushrooms are not going to be the cures in cancers, at least not yet. However, several studies have shown that when given in conjunction with chemotherapy or radiation therapy, tumors appear to shrink better and people have a better quality of life. Certain mushrooms like shiitake have also helped people suffer less from chemo-related toxicity. It did slightly improve survival rates by only about a month. So Big Pharma, they're pretty excited. They're searching for some kind of mushroom extract to make it into their next blockbuster chemotherapy. In the meantime, I'm just going to eat mushrooms and favor my leafy green leaves, along with aromatic L-seed spices. You make them tastier. Uru umami mushroom seasoning can transform boring greens like spinach, calabash, fish tried arugula into delicious, nutritious side dishes. Leafy greens have folate, chlorophyll, and chlorinoids like luteins, zeaxanthin. They're all important for your cancer fight. Did you know that the lack of folate causes DNA damage? Folate isn't just for pregnant people. We all need it. Folate supports proper DNA synthesis and repair. Chlorophyll is thought to bind and neutralize dietary carcinogens, and chlorinoid, they are strong antioxidants, further protecting your DNA from oxidative damage. And I know some people, they don't like the taste of green leaves because they're bitter. Not all of them are bitter, but they are a little bit bitter, and hence the benefit of combining foods with the herbs and the spices and the mushrooms to soften that bitterness. Another trick to making these vegetables taste better is to add sweet vegetables, Ickrats, sweet potatoes, and squash. These foods are not only colorful, but they are also rich in carotenoid-like beta-carotene and alpha-carotene, which get converted to vitamin A, which is another essential vitamin to support your immune system and your skin health. Carotenoids have antioxidant properties that help guard against cellular mutations. I was told in medical school that all men pass away with prostate cancer. Most of the time, they don't even know they haven't, but this actually isn't true. Take a look at this map. Countries in blue have low rates of prostate cancer. Now, notice how most of Asia have low rates of prostate cancer. However, even the traditional Asian diet is changing with the rise of processed food in dairy, and along with that comes a rising rate of prostate cancer. You remember Japan. After World War II, they started eating a lot of egg, meat, and dairy, and so their prostate cancer risk increased by 25-fold. It's so much lower than us in America. And of course, there are multiple things that trigger cancer growth. It's not going to be just your food. And people who are at higher rate of prostate cancer, may have a family history. They're usually older in age, and they could have obesity or history of smoking, or they may have received ionizing or UV radiation, or maybe they've been exposed to arsenic or other chemicals like Agent Orange, or even infectious diseases that cause prostatitis or STDs like gonorrhea and chlamydia. They too increase the risk of prostate cancer. Now, there are some things that you can't change, like your family history, and nobody on purpose wants to get irradiated or pick up an STD, right? However, STDs are rampant. But avoiding an STD is not rocking science, folks. 1 of 5 Americans get an STD, especially those between the ages of 20 to 34. And for some reason, people think it's no big deal because we have antibiotics that can cure some STDs. Have you heard of herpes, HPV, or HIV? For me, H stands for a harder treat. Those germs are impossible to cure. If you don't want an STD to change your quality of life forever, then at the very minimum, test your partner, get yourself tested, and use protection. Now, the people who have the best respond to diet appear to have slow-growing, early-stage prostate cancer in which they are in the watch and wait stage of aggressive cancers may benefit from hormone therapy, along with like prostate therapy to help improve the quality of life, reduce bone pain, and rates of complications. And any patient with prostate cancer should really seek guidance from a medical oncologist and neurologist for best treatment options. However, even people under medical supervision could benefit from eating better foods and getting rid of the poisonous foods, right? A cure for prostate cancer was published in this paper, which may not cure everybody, but I'm sure would improve the quality and quantity of people's life and potentially slow down the progression of advanced prostate cancer, even if it's not curable. Now, I mentioned arsenic, which is not only a problem around the world, but also in our food supply. And if you want to learn more about that, watch the next video.